If there was not a United Church of Christ, it would be extremely imperative for people of faith to establish a United Church of Christ and to do so immediately. We are a people of possibilities. I'd like to share just this brief story about my own journey. In 1957, I was 10 years old. I found myself seated on the edge of a pew. We called them benches at the Beavers Chapel Christian Church in North Carolina, the Southern Conference. There were two elders of the church uh, who engaged in a conversation, and I don't know if they knew I was listening, but they were very close to me. One of them said to the other, "They want us to go in with white folks. What do you think we should do?" The other, who was an agriculture teacher and a wise man, said, I think we should do that because we don't want to be left behind." They had no way of knowing, when I was 10 years old, that their decision would impact my life forever and indirectly would impact the church. 8 years later, a visitor from the Board for Homeland Ministries came down to Zebulon to meet with members of our church. He was an Asian American gentleman named Dr. George Nishimoto. I'll always remember his name. Dr. Nishimoto opened the meeting by having people to comment on their recent experiences. I was fully employed with the IBM Corporation at the time, and when he asked us to tell our stories, I shared my sense of call to ministry. At the end of the meeting, he asked a very logical question. He said, "Marvin, now that you've been called to ministry, are you planning to attend college and seminary?" I immediately shook my head because I said to him, "I don't have all of the money saved to go to college." And he placed his hands on his side and said, "Marvin, you don't have to have all the money saved before you go to college. I want you to know the guidance counselor in my high school was the biology teacher. Not once did he say to me I could apply for financial aid. My parents were sharecroppers. They had no money that could be committed to financial aid. Dr. Nishimoto said he knew a college president not far away on the Elon College campus who was interested in diversifying his student body. At that point, they had 4 students who were African American. He canceled his flight back to New York. It was on a Saturday. Delayed his flight until Monday evening. On Monday morning, I took the day off and rode with him from Zebulon, North Carolina to Elon Community, near Burlington, North Carolina. There I met with the admissions staff. I met the president of the college, and they said to me, this was around November 1967, "If you will come in January, we'll make certain you never have to drop out because of finances." That decision totally transformed my life. And I give credit to the United Church of Christ and to Elon University, a UCC-related school. I looked at the delegate list for the 1971 General Synod and noticed that there were not any Black students in the delegate pool, not that I could recognize. I wrote a letter in this church of possibilities. I wrote a letter to Dr. Howard Sprague, the executive of the Board for Homeland Ministries. And I indicated to Dr. Sprague that as a person about to enroll in seminary, I wanted an opportunity, along with others in my category, to find out what really happens at a General Synod. He had a member of his staff, Reverend James Hargett, who now lives in California in a retirement center. He had Reverend Hargett to call a meeting of Black seminarians. That meeting was held in Grand Rapids during the time of the General Synod. We formed at that General Synod our very first Black Seminarians Caucus. Not many weeks after that, we organized the first Youth Caucus. A young man who's now deceased, Chaz Elliker, and I served as the first co-chairs, or as co-chairs of the first Youth Caucus. That Youth Caucus gathered at the following General Synod in St. Louis, 1973. And there we were able to get the under 30 rule introduced, which totally changed the, let me say, the hair complexion of the UCC, because our delegations at General Synod and other places quickly turned from all gray-haired men and women like myself to a very wonderful intergenerational mix of decision makers on behalf of this denomination. The church has been right there on the cutting edge of justice issues as long as it's been in existence. Many of the stories are known throughout the denomination. Those entering the denomination, I would urge them to look at some of those stories. The first ordained female, who was not only ordained, but she served as pastor of a church. The first mainline denomination to elect an African American as president. So I ended up elected to the Executive Council of the United Church of Christ. We were charged with responsibility for electing the president of the church. What the public does not know is that there was a bit of a struggle getting Dr. Evans elected president of the church. There were large church pastors who felt it was their turn to have a person as president. There were conference executives who felt that the next and most natural person should be a conference executive. And so we went through about 3 ballots and were not able to elect a person to that office. Then one of those interesting justice moments within the life of the church. I was at that time president of the Ministers for Racial Justice out of the Southern Conference. I had a personal friend, John Silvasi, who was with the Calvin Synod at that time. We decided in a little side caucus that we were going to pool our resources, essentially, pool our votes. And of course, we had other allies in the room when Dr. Evans's name was put up for election or nomination. That was the only way we were able to get Joe Evans elected president of the church. So it is a wonderful step, a wonderful first, but it came in the midst of struggle. One of the things I appreciate about the United Church of Christ is the United Church of Christ is willing to engage in struggle with love and with respect. And that has led to some wonderful results throughout this denomination. There was a day, of course, when 9 young people, along with our missionary, the Reverend Dr. Benjamin Chavis, were charged with a serious crime, the crime of arson down in Wilmington, North Carolina. I was at that time a member of the Executive Council. We went to meetings of the Executive Council, and in those meetings, were able to prevail upon others who were leaders throughout this denomination that it was important to continue our support for the Wilmington 10. Not all of those votes were unanimous by any means, but those votes were victorious in that among the executive leadership of the denomination and those serving on the Executive Council at that time, there were extremely open minds, compassionate souls, willing to reach out in a way that eventually led to the vindication of Dr. Ben Chavis and the others who were part of the Wilmington 10. And we could go on and on with stories regarding the veterans who were engaged in justice. Uh, Reverend Valerie Russell is one. Reverend Dr. Yvonne Delk is another. Women who engaged in the struggle over women's issues, but at the same time coped with issues related to race. And they stood up, they fought, and they have been a blessing throughout the United Church of Christ. Some years ago, the president of Morehouse College, Dr. Benjamin E. Mays, said from time to his students, when you're called to do a job, make certain you do that job in such a way that no person living, no person dead, and no person yet unborn can do the job any better. I believe the United Church of Christ listened in on those conversations Dr. Mays had with his students, because this denomination has been on the cutting edge of justice issues for as long as I can remember. We say with our lips how much we love Jesus Christ, how much we appreciate Christ's sacrifice for us. We do ourselves a disservice if we do not also remember that Jesus Christ was engaged in justice ministries. He was not neutral. He chose sides, and he always chose the side of the oppressed over against the oppressor. Over and over again, throughout the New Testament narratives, we see evidence of Jesus Christ choosing sides. And one of the laments that Dr. Martin Luther King made in his letter from a Birmingham jail was that so many pastors of leading congregations had failed to step forward to support the civil rights movement. That was a disappointment for him. I pray we will never ever be caught again with our hands in our pockets when we ought to be out on the cutting edge of justice issues. In 2005, the United Church of Christ stepped forward, one of the first major denominations, stepped forward to affirm the right to marriage for all of God's children. LGBT community, of course, was affirmed in a way that was extraordinary. For those persons who are seeking a denomination where you have the freedom to stand with people in the midst of their struggles, the United Church of Christ is the place to be. I'm not suggesting that there's anything wrong with other faith groups. Of course, we are a united and a uniting church, a united and a uniting church. We would hope to be in unity with people of all faiths and all backgrounds. But the place from which we launch our movements and our struggles, the United Church of Christ, I believe, is one of the best places to do that. It is a church that stands with open arms, welcoming all people. And though it may sound cliche-ish, it is at the heart of our being. Whoever you are and wherever you are on life's journey, this is a place where you are welcome.